Well, howdy y'all. Welcome to Once Upon a Time in Texas, episode number 93. I am your host, Michael Mitchell. Wasn't sure I was going to be able to get this podcast off this week. I've been suffering a little bit from allergies and I about lost my voice and my throat hurt. And anyway, it was a whole thing, but you know what? I was able to pull it together and here I am. So if I clear my throat or cough a little bit, you'll know why. It is what it is, and we're just going to make it happen. So, random stuff. Last week was Thanksgiving, and really enjoyed doing that podcast. I hope y'all out there on the old interwebs really enjoyed it. We ended up doing a couple of things. I think I mentioned we went to the Texas Ren Fair, and that was fun. Did a few things around the house, kind of prepping for winter. We've got an old house, so there are things we got to do. And then went up, spent Thanksgiving with my aunt and uncle on my father's side. And then did a little bit of shopping. Not your typical Black Friday shopping, but we tried to go to REI. We ended up going to Cabela's or Bass Pro there in North Oklahoma City. And did a little bit of looking at like backpacking stuff. And, you know, both of my girls are going next summer out to Philmont Scout Ranch, and so we're trying to get them set up and prepped. So it was good. Another big thing that we did, my oldest daughter, Lorelei, has been working on her Eagle project quite a bit. And it was being built out at a friend of ours' house. He's a retired engineer. And so this raised archery platform was way overbuilt. Pretty much sure you could park a tank on top of this thing and it wouldn't budge, but very heavy, very sturdy, and it's not going anywhere. But we got the fabrication all done and got it transported out to the Northwest Texas Field and Stream and set up. And now she just needs to go out and do some minor painting and stuff, then do her paperwork and her board review, and she will be an Eagle Scout. So super excited about that. Other than that, just around Wichita Falls, kind of the big talk is the is pretty much the runoff race for city councilor at large. So that's happening right now. So if you're here locally in Wichita Falls, go vote. Go get that taken care of. Early voting started yesterday and goes through, I believe, the 10th, maybe the 11th, and then actual voting day is the 14th. So go get that done. Go do your civic duty. It's good stuff. So let's take a look at two interesting fellows that merely passed through Texas, but really left a lasting impression in their own way. So before we jump into this, as always, I want to thank our sponsors, me and Victory Home Loans. I know there are tons of people moving to and in Texas and Oklahoma. If you know somebody looking to buy a house, refinance a house, do a reverse mortgage on a house, even buy some land, send them my way. I can help them out with all of that stuff. I am a mortgage loan originator, loan broker, if you will. And I think we're in, 16 states now with Victory Home Loans. I'm licensed Texas and Oklahoma, so send them over my way. TheMichaelMitchell.com, THE, MichaelMitchell.com. Let me help them out. Remember, when you work with me and Victory Home Loans, we sell dreams, not mortgages. So, where did this week's idea come from? Well, honestly, it was just a random Facebook post, really. And then I kind of had to go do a little more searching there. There really wasn't anything that like jumped out and slapped me in the face, inspired me like I normally get. But that's okay. I'm committed to laying down these podcasts as you guys are committed to listening to them. So, you know what? I went out and did my work. I would like to mention, I don't know if some of y'all noticed, really what I do is I go out and find the interesting history, and I do a little bit of rewriting kind of in my own words. To be honest, I kind of tend to copy and paste from the websites and stuff that I find and read that to you, and then I kind of add in my comments and stuff. So just in case anybody asks, I'm the one going out and digging up the stuff, but, I'm not totally, completely rewriting everything. So that's why I like to give you guys the websites. You can go do a little more digging, stuff like that. So let's start with a guy named Howard Everett Perry and a home he built way, way, way out in West Texas called, appropriately, the Perry Mansion. So I found this information on terlinguamansion.com. And so Terlingua is way out in West Texas on the border, kind of in Big Bend country. I've never actually been out that far, but it's one of those ghost town attraction places. I've heard a lot about it, and I've never been. I want to go someday. So I do know they have a big chili cook-off out that way once or twice a year. Anyway, just some cool stuff, but very cool old ghost town with lots and lots of history. So found this information on the terlinguamansion.com, and it says, the story of the Perry Mansion starts with Howard Everett Perry, a prominent Cleveland and Chicago businessman who won some isolated desert property in a New England poker game. That's right. Think about this. A guy from Cleveland, Ohio, and Chicago, Illinois wins some desert property in a poker game way out in West Texas. What the hell is this guy going to do with it? Well, let's talk about that. Over the next few years, he repeatedly received offers to buy this arid wasteland and starts to become curious. People are interested in buying this place. So Perry visited the Big Bend and learned that his new land in remote Terlingua, Texas was rich in cinnabar, which is the ore of mercury. Taking this news seriously, this forever businessman travels to Almaden, Spain to study the most successful mercury mine in the world. Upon his return to Terlingua, Perry created the Chisos Mining Company, incorporating it in 1903 and registering its principal offices in Augusta, Maine, which is geographically probably about the furthest place away ever that you can get from Terlingua. But, whatever. So mercury was already being mined throughout the area, but Perry's mine had the richest deposits. Mercury was in great demand, and the nearby population of Mexico provided eager workers for this project. Known at the time as a businessman with the ethics of a pirate, Perry had no problem exploiting the labor force. In a short time, the little non-town of Terlingua grew to 1,000 or more. How would you like to be known as having the ethics of a pirate? It just doesn't seem great. So, in a period of history known for robber barons and other greedy captains of industry, Perry's business practices were often at odds with the more amicable tactics of the locals as he ruled over politicians and officials throughout the Big Bend area. Hey, you win property at a poker game, you want to rule the roost. So you might as well come in to town and make your business known. So life was particularly hard for the workforce, but Anglos, white people, had the better administrative jobs, better homes, and more respect. The laborers worked 7 days a week. Water was rationed. Conditions underground were dangerous, sometimes fatally so, and without ventilation, of course, extremely hot, horridly hot, and most likely miserable. While El Patron was respected by his laborers for providing work at a time and place where it was rare, he was not loved, as you could imagine. Perry was a short man, and the Mexican workers quickly labeled him with alternative nicknames as El Perrito, meaning the little dog, and also Chapo Perez. By 1906, business was booming, and Perry's mine was supplying 20% of the nation's quicksilver. That's a huge amount. Relishing this prosperity, Perry wanted a suitable home for his wealthy Chicago bride, Grace Henderson, and ordered the construction of a mansion far beyond all local comparisons, which, if you've ever been out to West Texas, you can really probably construct a mansion out of a large tarp and probably do better by local comparisons, especially back in the early 1900s. So, crowning a hill overlooking his dusty empire, the mansion took shape. With a design inspired by Moorish architecture, it boasted 9 bedrooms and a 90-foot long front porch adorned with 9 elegant arches. And all this magnificence was sitting atop the only wine cellar in the region, because why not? Upon the mansion's completion, Mrs. Perry was invited to join her husband in their new abode. The journey was difficult at the time. Just to reach Marfa by train from her elegant estate in Portland, Maine. After that, it was a perilous 2-day ride through the Chihuahuan Desert on a freight wagon drawn by 4 feisty mules. Legend says that Mrs. Perry spent a single night in the mansion and then called for her mule-drawn carriage, saying emphatically, "I've seen enough." She hightailed it back to her Casco Bay estate in New England and never returned. I mean, seriously, if you're up in Maine and then you go through all the hoopla to get way out to Terlingua, I mean, probably one night was all this poor lady needed. She was in hell, I promise you that. At least that's what she thought. So the truth is that Mr. Perry never spent a lot of time in his mansion either. He preferred to manage the mining operations from his offices in Chicago, Illinois and Portland, Maine. A pioneer of modern telecommuting, he managed via semi-weekly telegraphed reports from on-site subordinates and replied with instructions. By 1913, there was a single telephone in Terlingua, and it was in the office of the Chisos Mining Company. One reason that Perry stayed away was that he was always a little apprehensive of his neighbor at the time, a little loco fellow that some people know as Pancho Villa, and his band of, bloody do-gooders, I guess. The Chisos Mining Company paid laborers in cash at the end of each shift in U.S. silver dollars, and Perry knew that his payroll shipments presented a likely target for Villa's raiders. He was aware of rumors among the Mexican laborers that Villa sometimes visited the mine, lurking and watching. Really, that was probably just the laborers telling Mr. Perry that because it kept him away. They didn't like the guy anyway. A little-known asset of the mansion was its sturdy construction, with walls on the ground floor that were 2 feet thick, making the mansion a formidable fortress in a time of need. In fact, on the top floor of the mansion, in the area that is now the Great Room, perched a fully functional Gatling gun, always at the ready, just in case. Indeed, Howard Perry planned ahead, just like Batman or Mark Zuckerberg and pretty much everybody on Hogan's Heroes. He had built-in secret escape chutes under the mansion. A hidden tunnel would lead him to safety some distance from the mansion. From there, he could escape in his car, one of only a few in the area, and probably fleeing to General Blackjack Pershing's army encampment a few miles away in the neighboring town of Lajitas. Such a wonderful hilltop mansion should provide stories of fancy balls and legendary dinners filled with distinguished guests. Terlingua, however, unfortunately, was never the place for such events. However, because Mr. Perry was so often away for long periods, it is said the Mexican ladies who staffed the mansion took many opportunities to indulge in their own secret fiestas. Terlingua grew as the mine prospered, eventually developing into a village of several thousand people. Perry operated a company store, the only general store within 100 miles, where his workforce received their daily pay and then spent it on the necessities of life in the desert at the company store. I believe there's a song about that. I owe my soul to the company store. Anyway, in time, he built an ice-making plant, a cantina, the Chisos Hotel, an ice cream store, the Oasis Confectionery Shop, the Santa Ynez Catholic Church, several schools, a post office, the obligatory jail, and for movies, the Chisos Theater, now known as the Starlight Theater. And he filled a cemetery, which has become one of the most photographed landmarks in Texas. By 1934, the mine had shipped over $12 million of mercury, but the good times, as usually do, would not last. The first bad sign was Perry losing a lawsuit because among his 40 miles of tunnels at many levels below ground, one tunnel extended far into the adjoining Rainbow Mine, which is a big no-no. Perry tried to expand, buying several other mercury mines, plus investing in a silver mine in nearby Shafter, Texas, and a gold mine in Canada. By 1943, the world's mercury supply was ample, and as the markets and prices declined, the Chisos Mining Company began to fail, ending in bankruptcy. Howard Perry died in 1944 on a train bound for a Florida vacation, obviously unaffected by the bankruptcy. His mansion fell into disrepair, and despite the occasional visitor or squatter, the structure began to decay in the hot desert sun. The mine went through several owners and degraded into an empty ghost town. It was eventually purchased by local legend Rex Ivy and is now owned by his son, Bill. The Ivy family began renovation of the Perry Mansion in 2015 and is delighted to reopen the historic icon to the public. So isn't that kind of cool? So if you ever get a wild hair to really go see Wild West, Texas, Terlingua is the place to do it. Now let's shift to this guy that we called the occasional desperado. We find info on this sometimes outlaw on the Traces of Texas Facebook page, which is fascinating if you guys want to go check it out. This guy's name was Joseph Graves Olney. And today, which I'm recording on December 3rd, so it's correct, today marks the 140th anniversary of the death of rancher, cattleman, and occasional desperado Joseph Graves Olney, who died in Cochise County, Arizona, when his horse fell on him, which happened December 3rd, 1884. He had arrived in Arizona about 7 years before, having moved from Texas under circumstances which were questionable. And that's what this podcast is all about, right? You know, questionable circumstances, odd rivalries, things like that. Our boy Joseph was born in Burleson County to Joseph and Mary Kay Olney on October 9th, 1849. The family remained in Burleson until 1860, and then they moved their ranch to Burnett County, down south. In 1870, Olney married Agnes Jane Arnold and set up his own ranch in neighboring Llano County. About this time, Olney became friends with a cowboy named Johnny Ringo. Ooh, does anybody remember the name Johnny Ringo? Think about it. Him and Doc Holliday got into a little spat. In 1872, Olney served in John Alexander's Company O of the Texas Minutemen and participated in action against Indian raiders. His name appears on the court dockets for minor indictments such as gaming. Over the next few years, Olney, along with Johnny Ringo and the Baird brothers, became involved in the Mason County Hoodoo War. As the situation escalated, Scott Cooley and Johnny Ringo were arrested and incarcerated in the Lampasas County Jail. It is believed that Olney and John Baird were the leaders of the group that sprung the two out. It is also believed that Olney hid Ringo in Llano. The morning of September 7th, 1876, brought two riders, Deputy Sheriff S.B. Martin and Wilson Roundtree, to the Olney Ranch. Not recognizing Olney, they asked where to ford the river. Olney directed them, and feeling suspicious, he followed them in. Martin and Roundtree then recognized Olney. A gun battle ensued in which Roundtree was wounded in the arm and Martin was killed. Olney attempted to exonerate himself by submitting his explanation to the local newspaper. He fled to New Mexico, where he began using the alias Joe Hill. His name appeared on Governor Lew Wallace's list of outlaws. He was a wanted man listed as Joseph Hill, alias Olney, killing a deputy sheriff in Burnett Town, Texas. So, by the late 1870s, Olney had purchased a ranch in Old Mexico and Nuevo Casas Grandes near Carlitos. and established another ranch in the San Simeon Valley of Arizona. He drove cattle between the two ranches up to the San Carlos Reservation for sale to Indian agents. On one such drive, Alney, Johnny Ringo, Ike Clanton, and Al Turner hoorah'd the town of Safford, Arizona, in typical cowboy behavior. Alney and Ringo were present at the 1881 killing of Dick Lloyd. The two men and others were playing cards in the saloon when a drunken Dick Lloyd shot Ed Mann, mounted Alney's horse, and rode into the saloon. Lloyd was shot by Jack O'Neill. Alney and Ringo also rode together as part of the 1882 posse who pursued the Earp brothers after the vendetta killings of Frank Stillwell and a Mexican named Florentino Cruz. After Johnny Ringo's death in 1882, I'm your Huckleberry, Joseph Alney's life finally began to settle down. He dies on December 3rd, 1884, survived by his wife Agnes Jane and 5 children under the age of 15. On December 13th, 1884, the Arizona Silver Belt reported from the Wilcox Stockman, we learned that Joe Hill, a well-known cattleman, met with a fatal accident at Bowie. I'm assuming they're talking Bowie, Arizona, on Wednesday of last week. While driving cattle into a corral, riding at full gallop, his horse stumbled and fell. Mr. Hill was thrown violently to the ground and received internal injuries from which he died within an hour. Subsequent reports indicate that Alney's horse actually fell on him. So there you go. Born in Texas, got tangled up with Johnny Ringo, who we all know and love from movies like Tombstone and Wyatt Earp. Rode against the Earp brothers for a while. Rode against some other lawmen. Apparently had a few run-ins with the law. Moves to Arizona. Has a few brushes with the law. Finally settles down. And then a horse falls on him and kills him. It makes me think of the movie 1,000 Ways to Die in the West. I mean, literally, there were just tons of ways to die. And as somebody who has had not one, but 2 horses roll over on him, it's not fun. And that's why I now ride 4-wheelers, because they don't eat when they're in the barn and they don't have minds of their own. And if you get bucked off, it's probably your own damn fault. Which, I don't know. I'm proud to say I've been bucked off a 4-wheeler a time or two also. Doing stupid stuff I probably shouldn't have. So anyway, there you go. Howard Everett Perry, Terlingua, Texas, and the Chisos Mining Company and the Perry Mansion. And a little bit of history on Terlingua. And then this guy, Joseph Alney, or Joseph Hill. Did his horse trip and fall and he was thrown away? Or did his horse trip and fall and land on him? Who knows? So there you go. So what do y'all think? Let me know what other weird, off-the-wall, or interesting Texas history you'd like to hear about. I want to thank our sponsors again, me and Victory Home Loans as always. Keep in mind, if you know someone moving to or in Texas or Oklahoma and needing to buy a house, send them my way. TheMichaelMitchell.com, THE, MichaelMitchell.com. Thank you all for tuning in to Once Upon a Time in Texas, episode number 93. As always, remember, the stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of us. Y'all have a great week.